We are here with Nicholas Begich running for the open Anchorage Assembly seat in the Chugiak-Eagle River area. Hello, Nicholas.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Of course. Go ahead and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a business owner, I'm a father, I'm a husband. My wife and I have been married for the last 12 years, and we have a wonderful 4-year-old son, Nicholas the Fourth, and he is a bundle of energy. I have 150 employees globally. I have run a software development company, and we do Android apps, iPhone apps, e-commerce applications for everything from small startups to large Fortune 500 companies. I'm also a small business investor. I've made about 40 startup investments in the last 5 years, and I know what it takes to build a business from nothing but a PowerPoint deck and a credit card all the way up to large scale. So
okay.
That's a little bit about me.
So why are you running to be on the Anchorage Assembly?
Well, my business has been growing. I've been working at this for the last 10 years. We've reached a point where, I can start to take a little bit of a step back and start to give back to the community. And this seemed like a good opportunity to do that, and I'm excited about the privilege and the opportunity to run for such an important seat.
All right, and so if the voters choose to elect you on April 5th, what will be your top priority?
Well, the number one priority that I hear about out in my area of town is public safety. Eagle River and Chugiak, we don't tend to have a lot of the same types of crime that you see in other parts of Anchorage, but we've started to see some actual murders out where we're at, which is very concerning to people. And in speaking with APD, these are gang-related in some cases. These are definitely drug-related in some cases. And I really think that we need to bring back, the gang unit that focused on gang activity in the city. It was effective. It allowed us to clean up the streets a lot faster, and I think those are some things that we need to be looking at. Obviously, the budget is something that's really important for the city. And I believe in what's called a zero-based budgeting process. And a zero-based budgeting process is one in which we look at every single line item on the budget every year, okay? And what that means is we connect every line item on that budget with every department's objectives and ensure that there's alignment. And to the extent that there's not alignment, those budgetary line items are suspect and they need to go.
Okay, so I was going to ask you about the budget. You brought it up, so I'm just going to go into my next question, the cuts. It's a tough decision to make, but it has to be made by assembly members. And are there some areas that you can identify just off the top of your head? These are places that we should look at for cutting.
Well, it's a great question, and I'm a process-driven person. Prior to moving back to Alaska 12 years ago, I worked at Ford Motor Company as a global technology manager. And, going back to that zero-based budgeting process, I was first exposed to that process at Ford. Many people will remember that Ford was going through some very difficult challenges. There were many people that believed that Ford would not continue forward as an American icon. We used Six Sigma. We used zero-based budgeting. I was given an assignment in my first 3 weeks at the company to cut 10% off of a $250 million budget. And I worked with the department heads. 3 weeks after that, we were able to do it. And we did it in a way that did not impact the quality of our products or services. We did it again 6 weeks later for an additional 15% off that budget. And it's surprising the things that you'll find when you go through the process. Speaking specifically about Anchorage, one of the things that concerns me and it concerns a lot of the people that I speak with are the manner in which we bond things. Bonds are a major driver of our property taxes in this town. And when I see things like IP cameras, when I see things like school buses, these are things that on the grand scale are relatively moderate to minor expenditures. Do we really need to bond these? Aren't these foreseeable? Shouldn't they be fit within the scope of the existing budget?
So once you start fitting those maintenance things that we should be putting in the budget, according to several people, something else has got to go, right?
Well, yes, there are things that need to go. And, I've talked with teachers, right? I've talked with the AEA extensively on this particular topic. And, my bias is for teachers, not for infrastructure when it comes to education. I went to a small high school, okay? We actually rented our gymnasium, all right? Now, I'm not proposing that we do that in this town, but my point is we had some great teachers at the school that I went to, teachers that really cared about education. We have teachers in this town just like that. right? Those are the people that drive learning outcomes for our students. I think we've got some fantastic facilities, but when faced with the budget challenges that we all know exist, you know, we're going to have to tighten the belt a little bit on some of those types of investments, and in order to retain the high quality teachers that we've got educating our students.
Your opponent proposed several amendments to the recent budget. Cut. She knew several places that she wanted to see resources taken away. Are you prepared to look at the budget like that and have those direct and if multiple, if needed, cuts that you are going to want to see?
Absolutely, absolutely. The answer is yes. You know, but I think there's a distinction here. You know, the manner in which the legislative body of the Assembly works. You know, a lot of this work should be done in a work session environment. A lot of this work should be done, you know, sort of offline in the sense of building consensus. And you know, it's unfortunate that she wasn't able to get any of those amendments passed. I think she proposed around 40 amendments and wasn't able to get any of them through. And you know, ultimately, we have to work with everyone on the Assembly, right? No matter where we may sit on the political spectrum, we've got to have and maintain the respect of the people that are on that body, because in order to move our priorities forward, we need their support. And you know, if elected, that's going to be my approach. My approach is going to be to get the work done before the meeting, and that's the best way, in my opinion, to advance those sorts of priorities.
All right, let's talk about taxes. So right now, property owners are carrying the full weight of taxes. Do you see yourself supporting efforts to diversify the tax base, possibly with a sales tax?
I do not support the addition of new taxes, and I'll explain why. A lot of times, taxes can be used as a budgetary plug, okay, and it's used as a mechanism to prevent legislators from making difficult choices. All right. A lot of times at the state level right now, we're talking about an income tax, and there's a lot of discussion, you know, back and forth about whether this is justified. I don't support an income tax at the state level, as an example. And the reason I don't is because, you know, these are slippery slope situations. We start out with 6% of your federal income taxes that you would pay as a state tax. Well, what's it going to be tomorrow? What's it going to be 5 years from now, when maybe we have a bigger deficit? Right? These things have sort of a way of growing over time, and that concerns me. And I think that the property tax as we have it right now, it's not perfect, right? I don't like the fact that technically you never own your home because if you don't pay your tax. I don't like that. But ultimately, it's a simple way for us to collect taxes. It keeps the administrative burden low for the city, and I think that makes sense, and I would preserve it the way we've got it right now.
Do you support the most recent changes that the Assembly made to the way we calculate the tax cap?
I do not support that. And one of the challenges that we have with the way in which the original ordinance was written is that it permits this sort of ambiguity regarding how things are calculated. So you move from one legislative body over time to a newly elected legislative body, and you know, the representation believes that, oh well, you know, maybe it should be interpreted this way or that way. We need to eliminate the ambiguity associated with that legislation. It's a foundational component of our budget, and so I support eliminating that ambiguity. I don't think Proposition 8, which is what you're referring to, is perfectly written. I think that one of the things that concerns me about it, I'll be voting yes, but one of the things that concerns me about it is that it encourages departmental heads to spend down their budgets before the end of the year, or they'll lose that budget next year. Now, as I was mentioning earlier, the zero-based budgeting process doesn't use that approach. It doesn't worry about what happened last year. It worries about what's going to happen this year, right? And so I think that's a better way to go. I think that makes more sense. It's certainly the way that businesses operate, right? And so, you know, I'll support Prop 8. I support it because it returns us to the previous calculation methodology, but I think that there needs to be some additional edits to that over time through amendment or additional ordinance in order to correct some of those issues.
Okay, now you touched on this earlier, public safety, but what direct steps can you and the Assembly take to make Anchorage a safer place to live?
Yes, so in speaking with the police department, you know, There were several opportunities for us to have police academies, and that opportunity was sort of eroded, right? And through natural attrition, our numbers are down on the police force. You know, out in Chugach-Eagle River, we've got 3 people on patrol out there, and given the increases in crime in our area, it's just not enough. Unfortunately, you know, the police department has to allocate the number of police across the entire city. And they do that based on the number of calls and the type of calls that they receive. And I just don't think that we have enough police officers in the city for the population that we've got. And I've seen data that supports that. And you know, I'm encouraged by what we're seeing right now. We're starting to see an increase in the amount of recruiting for police officers. And I think that's going to help us address crime. I mentioned earlier the gang unit, restoring the gang unit and the drug enforcement units, I think is very important. And those action items, specific action items, go a long way to addressing crime and making people feel more safe in the city that they love.
All right. The mayor has been pushing housing first. What can you do along with the assembly, if you're elected, to help with Anchorage's homeless population?
Well, you know, the homeless population question is something that it's complex. There are a lot of facets to it. Why are people homeless? Well, you've got a lot of homeless that come in from different parts of the state and find it difficult to find gainful employment here. Maybe they don't have the skills necessary. Maybe they have a substance abuse problem. And there is a large substance abuse issue within the homeless population within Anchorage. And we've also got a mental health question for a lot of these folks. And you know, there's no silver bullet solution out there for addressing the homeless question. Putting people in a home that's a start, but you haven't addressed the underlying reason why they're homeless. And you know, I think we need to focus on mental health. We need to focus on substance abuse. And we need to allow these people to get an opportunity to get back on their feet. Anchorage does best when Anchorage works. Anchorage does best when everyone participates. And I think it's important that we invest some resources, additional resources, in moving these people back into productive members of the community.
All right, and then another housing issue, there is a shortage of housing in Anchorage and our population is projected to grow. How do you help the community prepare for that?
Well, you know, we have a general affordability problem in the town, okay? It's not just housing. We've got affordability with everything from shipping things up from the lower 48 to food or any of these things. And so, you know, finding creative ways, new ways to address this sort of old problem is something that I'm not afraid to try, right? Title 21 is something that's driving up costs for home builders. And it's, you know, it was a carefully crafted document, and there are processes by which that document should be managed and edited and receive public comment, et cetera, and I support that. But ultimately, you know, we need to really be careful in the regulations that we pass that have the potential to drive up costs for businesses, for property owners, for first-time home buyers. You know, these are the people that drive economic activity within the community, and if we're making Anchorage an expensive place to live. You know, I saw a study recently that said that Anchorage was arguably the second or third most expensive city on the West Coast. That's ridiculous. There's no reason for it. Look at all the land we've got out here, right? Doesn't make any sense. And I think there are some creative things that we can do to address it, and I'm looking forward to receiving input from the public on that.
All right, and we will see a brand new industry start here in Anchorage this summer. How do you think the muni should be regulating commercial marijuana?
Well, that's a great question. I get this question a lot regarding marijuana. And, you know, I've spoken with people on all ends of the spectrum on this particular issue. And I think it's important for voters to understand where I stand personally and where I stand as a potential legislator. So I'm just going to take the opportunity to explain that. You know, I voted no on this issue. The primary reason I voted no on this issue is because I have a 4-year-old son, and I'm very concerned about the manner in which the signage is going to be displayed. And you're in the media business, you understand about impressions.
Yeah.
You know, one impression doesn't do much to people, but what about 10,000 impressions over a child's lifetime, right? that's influential, and there's no one out there that can make the case that it's not influential. Children are not the best judges. In fact, there's a lot of studies that say that one's judgment isn't fully formed until their early 20s. Okay, so it's really important that we're careful about the manner in which this product is rolled out in the community. As a legislator, my view is I am here to represent the will of the people, not my own personal opinion, right? But I think a lot of people who voted yes are also concerned about some of the ways in which we choose to implement this in the community. And I've been encouraged by the things that I've heard from those would-be and hopeful marijuana entrepreneurs in the town, that they're going to take a responsible tact, that they are very cognizant of the community's feelings about this. And you know, there's some strong leadership on the Marijuana Control Board at the state level. People like Bruce Schulte, who I've spoken with about this. You know, they're very aware of the sensitivities associated with this. And my view is there are responsible regulations that can be put in place that will balance the way some people in the community may feel about marijuana with the opportunity for entrepreneurs to put forward responsible and exciting business plans for the community.
All right, and then quickly, the Anchorage School District wants to ask voters to approve bonds over the next 6 years, knowing that the taxpayers will likely be taking care of all of that with less money from the state. Is that something you support?
Well, let me tell you, I support the current bond issuance, and I'll tell you why. Despite my comments a moment ago about the buses, you know, net, you got to look at you vote on one bond package. You don't vote on the line items of the bond. So, you know, this is a conservative bond package. It's something that I think conservatives should support because it's about maintenance, right? When you're fixing things, you're not buying new things, and that's a responsible bond. And you know, we talked earlier about the potential for an increase in the population, but there's also potential for some decrease. You know, I recognize that the J-Bear drawdown has been put on pause, but we don't really know what's going to happen there. With the economic clouds on the horizon, we're not 100% sure what's going to happen with the population of Anchorage. And I think that it would be a mistake for us to start building new schools right now. We've got overcapacity in our school system. We need to use the things that we have in place, maintain them. I support bond packages that are maintenance, but new infrastructure I think we need to take a hard look at.
All right, and last question. How would you rate the mayor's performance so far? What grade would you give him?
That's a hard question to answer, okay? Because I think we haven't seen enough under the curve for this mayor. I'm encouraged by the tone of bipartisanship right now, and I think that's an important tone to strike. Look, ultimately these are nonpartisan seats. We're one community, and it's important that the mayor represent everyone in the community, right? He received a large mandate in the previous election. He got 61% of the vote across Anchorage. And you know, I think that he recognizes he received that vote because people expect him to be an even-handed, nonpartisan leader. And I'm hoping that we'll continue to see that sort of activity from him over the next several years.
All right, Nicholas Begich running for the open seat in Chugiak Eagle River. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.